Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Vyom Nagrani, and I am joined by my colleague, Deepthi Chelupati. We are both product managers on the Azure SRE agent team. Today, we want to explore a provocative question. What happens when AI agents don't just observe incidents, but actually act on them? We're going to show you how autonomous SRE is changing the way teams respond to production issues, moving from noisy alerts to automated intelligent action. So let's dive in. So today, generative AI is fundamentally transforming how we live and do work. And the proliferation of AI agents are playing a big part in driving this adoption. Notably, this trend is particularly strong in software development, where Gartner estimates that 90% of enterprise software engineers will use some form of AI coding or ops assistance by 2028. 90%. But let's start with a simple reality check for what's happening today. As a developer, your world still revolves around the same fundamentals. You're writing code, fixing bugs, designing the next set of features, and moving your product forward. But at the same time, the ground is shifting. You're not just building apps anymore. You're migrating and modernizing entire systems, increasingly with agents as part of how that work gets done. And beyond code, you own far more of that life cycle, from incidents and security to releases, documentation. Often you're running continuously, often with agents working alongside of you, sometimes even ahead of you. So the real change in the AI agent era isn't what you're responsible for. It's the scale, it's the speed, and it's how much of that responsibility you can now offload, orchestrate, and automate with agents. And the impact is evident across the entire life cycle for DevOps. AstraZeneca, for example, saw a 40% increase in developer velocity when adopting GitHub Copilot for writing the code. Ford saw a huge modernization efficiency boost, up to 70% when using the GitHub Copilot modernization. And similarly, Ecolab reduced daily alerts for their site reliability engineers from 30 to 40 a day, all the way down to under 10 a day by using Azure SRE agent. So in today's session, we want to talk to you more about this last piece, the SRE agent. So what exactly is Azure SRE agent? It's an AI-powered agent for incident management and resource optimization in production environments. Now, there are three core value propositions in there. First, that it automates operational tasks to keep your applications running and to protect your revenue. Second is that it accelerates root cause analysis to improve reliability and availability. And the third, that it's fully customizable. You can manage the agent and configure it to meet your unique operational needs and standards that your enterprise follows or your company follows. Think of it as an always-on SRE teammate that learns how your environment works and acts according to how you want it to. So here's what we'll focus on today's session. We have two main scenarios. The first is about preventing issues and reducing operational toil at scale. This is where the agent automates and customizes workflows, and the outcome is fewer incidents and less repetitive work for your teams. The second scenario is about reducing downtime and speeding up recovery. Here, the agent accelerates the root cause analysis, triggers mitigation, resulting in faster incident resolution with fewer handoff between teams and fewer churn between so many different windows. For each of these, we'll walk through the capabilities and then show you a live demo. But first, let's start by talking about the problem. So developers and SRE teams are buried in repetitive operational toil across the inner loop and the outer loop of software development. They spend their time detecting issues before they actually get rolled out to production, verifying that Azure best practices are followed, and they're doing this across hundreds or thousands of different resources across multiple stacks. This is exactly the kind of work that is well suited for automation. It's repetitive, it's well-defined, and it's error-prone and slow when it's done manually. And the Azure SRE agent is designed to take this burden off of your teams so that they can focus on building, not on firefighting. So with that, let's kind of try to dive deep into the first scenario there, where I'd like to invite my colleague Deepthi to talk about how we are going to show what Azure SRE agent can do in this space.
Thank you, Vyom. So for the first demo, what we wanted to show you is like as a developer, I'll be like, doing a lot of deployments week over week, and I want to make sure things are actually not breaking in production. But today, it's very manual. I need to go make sure whether, first of all, have some other developers review the code. And then I need to make sure to test it in the staging environment, whether it would cause any regression. And sometimes it depends on how much test coverage I have, whether I would be able to catch things ahead or not. So these are some of the things that may sort of slip and make it to production. And my goal as a developer is ideally, I don't want anything to slip into production. Let's see how SRE agent actually helps with this scenario. So with SRE agent, you can connect the agent to code repositories like GitHub or Azure DevOps, and you can even set it up through event webhook trigger such that you can trigger the agent in an asynchronous way. And why is that helpful is because you can imagine, your developers are actually pushing code PRs and you want the agent to actually act on it and check to make sure whether the code is good. So for that, in this demo, what I'll show you is that the SRE agent is connected to all the telemetry data sources. So someone actually created the agent for me. They connected it to Dynatrace, Log Analytics Workspace, and also some activity logs in Azure, which has the information. And the agent is set up with the resource groups that are required to monitor in the Azure ecosystem. So for me, in my team, we have like a resource group for production environment and a staging environment. And I'll also show you essentially how, as a developer, I don't have to leave my CLI or my sort of workspace in the IDE and go to Azure portal to look at the SRE agent, but still get all of this workflow done. So now let's see how this whole end-to-end flow works in action with SRE agent. Now I'll show you how you can create a new SRE agent and connect it to your GitHub action workflow such that it can monitor your PRs, check whether they are good to go and be merged. And in order to create that SRE agent, you need to set it up with a bunch of data sources, code repositories, and telemetry sources, and also set up some skills and custom agents that can essentially are like natural language instructions that the agent can follow to perform the corresponding workflow that we are working on right now. And today what I'm going to show you is, instead of going to the Azure portal, you can actually create the SRE agent, configure it, and even interact with it completely from your developer tools. And for me, Terminal is where I sort of use it a lot, and I love using Copilot CLI as well. So those are the two things I'm going to use right now. In order to create a new agent, what you can do is just use one of the recipes that we have created and hosted in our Microsoft SRE agent repo. So all this recipe does is essentially comes with a set of the connectors and the things, the tools and the skills that you can leverage out of the box. So you don't have to do it from scratch. So first, let me go into that folder. And to create a new agent, so there is like a script which first creates a configuration for the agent, and then you can deploy that. So this is like a recipe. I took it from our Microsoft SRE agent repo. And this recipe essentially allows me to create an agent that connects to GitHub, Dynatrace, and then is customized so that it can understand the architecture of the applications that I'm hosting on as well, like App Service and PostgreSQL. So I just provided few things that are required for the connectors, and the rest of the configuration comes with the recipe. So now it created this Contoso demo 5 folder in which the entire agent configuration exists. Okay, so let's deploy it first, and then I can show you what comes as a part of that recipe for the agent configuration. So this will take few minutes. So while it is running, let me show you how the agent looks like. And think of the entire agent configuration is in this folder. Let me actually show this to you in a VS IDE so it's easier to follow. So, when you create a new SRE agent in the Azure subscription, you need to give it a resource group in which the agent gets hosted. So you can change the name or the resource group or the subscription or the region that you want to choose. There's like 3 regions supported right now, and you can choose one of them. You can even give it like a target resource groups or the subscriptions, and you don't have to as well. But in this one, because I wanted it to monitor the production and the staging, I'm connecting to those resource groups. And there's a bunch of other things you can edit here. And connectors, so this recipe comes with a Dynatrace and Log Analytics workspace, but you can customize it and add your own connectors as well, and the corresponding auth details. And then you can even configure the agent with some skills or custom agents. Even if you've written them in a different sort of tool, you can bring them here as well, because we do support like the markdown file for instructions, and it's a simple YAML file on the prompt and the spec that you can use for some of the custom agents and the skills. And the other part of the configuration is how you want to invoke the agent through a HTTP trigger or a incident platform or a scheduled task. So in this case, I'm setting up a HTTP trigger, which you can hook it up to your GitHub action workflow. And that is how the SRE agent will be invoked whenever there is a new PR. The GitHub action workflow will trigger the SRE agent, and the agent will start performing the analysis of, the canary testing to see whether the PR change will cause some effect in the production or not, and if it's a good to go or not. So those kind of things you can set up like an event-driven way through this HTTP trigger. And the other part of the configuration is you can teach the agent some knowledge about your environment or your systems, and that can go under this folder. And then if there is anything that you want to go into the core memory of the agent, whether it is you're extracting it from an existing agent or you're seeding it, those things can go under the system synthesized knowledge. And all of these are simple markdown files as well. So in this case, this is, I'm not passing anything in this configuration, so this is good. And now let's see if the agent deployment is actually complete. Great, the agent deployment succeeded, and after it finished the agent creation, it's also performing some post hook configuration. Especially for connecting to GitHub, it gave me this OAuth URL that I need to go use to actually authorize. So the agent deployment is complete. So now that the agent is actually created, I want to still continue to use the same interface to connect and manage the agent. And for that, I can use Copilot CLI. So you can actually access SRE agent endpoint as an MCP server in order to connect to it, either view the analysis that the agent did or even configure things outside of the Azure portal. And that's been available for a while now. So what I'm doing is, because I have the MCP running locally, so I'm just gonna check the JSON file to see how it's configured. So right now it's connecting to a different agent. So I'm gonna actually take the URL we got from the deployment. So let's just check to make sure if it's applied correctly. Okay, it is connected. So let's now actually go to the Copilot CLI. All right, now the Copilot CLI is connected to a SRE agent that we just created through this sort of MCP server. So I'm gonna just interact with it to see whether what we've configured is actually on the agent. So I'm gonna ask So it got back with like the production and the staging resource group and the log analytics workspaces that are connected. Let's also check to see is GitHub connected to the agent. Okay, cool. It is connected. What is the repo? Now I want to see if if there is skills needed for our workflow that we want to set up. So what we really want the agent to do is whenever it sees a new PR, to actually take that change, deploy it in a staging environment, run a synthetic sort of traffic, and figure out if that change would sort of cause some risk to the production environment, right? So we sort of prevent those things or review those things more carefully. So for that, I'm going to just create a skill so that the agent has the skill to use. So I just asked 𝗬𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 to create a skill. So in order to do that, it's going to again use the SRE MCP server to create that. So it created the skill. And then I need a subagent that can be connected to this skill. All right. Now we have the skill, the custom agent, and the GitHub action workflow is wired to call the SRE agent through a HTTP trigger already part of our deployment that is set up and done. Now let's actually just do a code change and see if the SRE agent picks it up. Okay. So for that, I'm gonna switch to my coding workspace. So what I want to really do is like just change this URL and then just create a new branch and kick off this change. And I'm gonna create a new PR. Okay, so the pull request got created. So this is a new one that we just created. So once SRE agent finishes the work, it will come here and add a comment on this issue. Let's just check the agent to see. So it did pick up some work. So what this is doing is once that PR got created, the agent got invoked via the HTTP trigger. So it started to do the work. It's essentially trying to fetch the details about the PR so it can deploy that image in a staging environment and send some traffic to figure out whether it is a good deployment or not. I can show you one existing run from the before while it's still doing the work. So this was the PR that the agent actually worked on earlier this morning, which essentially did something similar where the database URL got switched. So the agent started picking that up and deployed it into the staging environment. Yeah, now it's sort of figured out the files that got exactly changed. After all the deployment and the synthetic traffic that it did figure out that the change would actually, in fact, impact the production deployment because the results from the backend database would be different. So let's go down. So here is where it did the staging in the so here is where it actually did it in the canary testing, the 5-minute synthetic test, and figured out that there is mock responses in the staging environment that are different from the production environment. And it was a really good result to know that things like this, you don't want them to be going into production. So it did flag it as high risk and added a comment on this PR. So this is now helpful because our team moves very fast at a lightning speed, and having this SRE agent automatically figure out whether it is a low risk or a high risk really puts us at sane and makes sure our production is safe. So in this demo, you saw how, as a developer, I was just able to, create an SRE agent right from my CLI, even configure or manage skills and sub-agents using Copilot CLI. And the agent was able to pick up when a developer actually created a PR in my code repository. And the SRE agent actually fully figured out if that PR was good to go and merge and added a comment. How cool is that? It's really helpful to know that at the velocity at which we're actually going these days and the PRs are being created, the agent is actually watching and making sure that those are good to go. So now I'll hand it back to Vyom, who will talk about the other capabilities within the SRE agent and what more you can do with it.
Thank you so much, Deepthi. This was really great. So now let's talk about how the agent enhances reliability and performance. And there are 3 key pillars here which you saw. First is the root cause analysis. Instead of engineers manually correlating logs, metrics, alerts across multiple dashboards, the agent performs a multipath transparent RCA automatically. It evaluates multiple hypotheses, tests them against telemetry, and produces a clear, explainable result and a diagnostic summary. This significantly reduces the time to insight from hours to minutes. The second is automated mitigation. The agent can resolve common issues proactively using your guardrails and human-in-the-loop workflows. It executes safe, reversible actions like restarts, scale adjustments, rollbacks, eliminating the repetitive toil while still keeping the humans in control. And the third is enhanced incident response. The moment an alert fires, an agent activates. It ingests signals from Azure Monitor or third-party tools, performs initial analysis, and gives the on-call engineer a head start with a synthesized explanation, a probable cause of what most likely the error was, and actionable next steps. Together, these capabilities drastically reduce the downtime and improve the operational consistency. The next part is one of our most important differentiators, and that is extensibility. Now, every organization has unique standards, unique processes, different compliance requirements. Azure SRE agent is designed to adapt to yours and not the other way around. You can integrate custom logic, your own data sources, your own custom knowledge into the agent's reasoning. You can encode your proprietary troubleshooting steps, your domain-specific checks, your specific remediation workflows, all so that the agent behaves consistently with your internal standards. And on the insides, it delivers intelligent multi-source analysis, correlating across logs, metrics, configurations, historical patterns to detect anomalies that are hard to spot manually. And as Deepthi showed, it deeply integrates with GitHub Copilot. Any action the agent performs, whether it's diagnosing, mitigating, or recommending, can be logged automatically as GitHub issues for traceability and follow-up. And this creates a continuous feedback loop to detect, diagnose, fix, and then improve. In short, extensibility ensures that the agent becomes your operational expert, shaped by your environment and aligned to how your teams already work. So with that, let's kind of dig a little bit deeper into a different scenario here for automated incident response. Deepthi, you want to walk us through more details here?
Thanks, Vyom, for walking us through those capabilities. Now I want to show you how to actually put that together in action. So in this one, earlier we talked about how a developer can sort of leverage SRE agent to take care of their outer loop, making sure things don't slip into production. But in reality, things can happen and you will find some issues in production. And then you want to make sure, as an IT operations group, the mean time to resolution for those incidents is very small so that your apps are healthy and quickly back return to available state. However, today's workflow involves looking at different tools like in this case, I've connected it to Dynatrace, and you have to look at Azure. You have to look at different log sources if you have multiple Azure telemetry strategy, and you need to sort of piece all those things together and then also make sense of where exactly things are going wrong, and then sort of go and figure out and mitigate it. And there's a lot more to that. So I'll walk you through how SRE agent can just simplify all of this into one agent, taking care of your incidents and then going straight to a code fix and mitigation, in few minutes. So in this setup, I have the same agent, the same agent that developers are using for their sort of outer loop. The same agent can be leveraged by your DevOps or the IT operations group, where they hook it up to ServiceNow or PagerDuty or Azure Monitor Alerts, whatever is your incident platform tool. And then you can sort of figure out a response plan of what kind of incidents you want the agent to handle. And in this one, you can also sort of insert either the knowledge sources or the runbooks and the things that you want the agent to be having that contextual knowledge of. Then what the agent does is when the incident pops up, it actually starts handling it right away. There's no human intervention. And then depending on how you configure the agent to actually process it, it'll do the diagnosis, root cause analysis, and then create a dev ticket or even further go ahead and fix it and create a PR for you. All right, let's get right into action. I'll show you how SRE agent can automate incidents and perform diagnosis, root cause analysis, and even create dev tickets with the analysis or fix the code and create a PR for you. So for the second scenario, like I said, I wanted to show how you can configure the SRE agent to automate incidents. In this case, my incident platform that I chose is ServiceNow, but you can connect it to PagerDuty or Azure Monitor. So the deployment script that we used to create the SRE agent, I just deployed another recipe which connects to ServiceNow. It comes with the skills that are required to handle the incidents for some app related errors. And it also has a custom agent that can essentially perform the investigation when the errors come in. So this is how the workflow looks like. When the ServiceNow incident comes in, it goes through the custom agent, which can connect to these tools and also the skills it has. So now I'll try to just break the app that is in production to simulate a ServiceNow incident, and we can see how the agent actually handles it. So I'm simulating a scenario where a IT person or IT team changes the password for a backend database because it's a password expired and it has to be rotated, but somehow the applications are not updated. So that's a scenario we're trying to figure out whether the agent can help us diagnose where the problem is. So now that the app is broken, I'm gonna just send a ServiceNow incident to simulate a real world case. and the ServiceNow incident is sent. So now let's take a look at the SRE agent. Okay, there you go. The incident number 3 came here. And we can see the agent picked off right away and it started investigating it. And because in this case I rotated the password, the order service would not be working and receiving some errors. So the agent started diagnosing it. And you can see because we uploaded the knowledge about the app architecture, first thing what the agent does is starts by looking at the knowledge base. So it's almost like, a team member who has a context of the things first tries to understand what it is before jumping right into the investigation aspect of it. And I think it sort of also has a memory of the past incidents. So it captured those investigations as well to see if it helps with anything that is a, pattern. Seems like someone is just changing the passwords or rotating them frequently. And because it has the tools and the telemetry being connected to it through Dynatrace and also through the Azure tools, it started doing that analysis in a sequential way. So first it looks at the logs to understand which app and then the revision is causing the problem, and then it starts to look at the activity logs to figure out. So it found that just now 3 minutes ago the password got rotated, which is true. So I think it's getting to the sort of correlation of what happened, and is it like matching the symptoms that the user is experiencing. So bingo, it figured out that the database password is rotated but the container app hasn't been updated, and that's why it's actually causing the failure. So now it sort of confirmed the root cause because it also has access to the issues that the agent saw from the past as well, that this is a recurring credential desync pattern. So now it's going to create a new issue in the GitHub to track and also to figure out what's a remediation. So as you can see, the SRE agent is not just trying to diagnose the issue based on what it saw, but it's also like, how as an expert engineer would tap into their past knowledge or past incidents that they have seen in the past to figure out whether there is some sort of a pattern or a similar analysis that can be applied here. It's doing something similar as well, and it's using the data to validate and support its hypothesis and assumptions as it's making throughout the investigation. And this is just happening within minutes, which means um, in reality figuring these things out would have taken multiple hours and switching between different tools and contexts, but the agent is just acting on that, and you don't have to actually look at the agent as it's finishing the analysis because the incident is picked up automatically, and you can just look at your GitHub issues or the tools through which you can receive the information, like even connect it to an Outlook or Teams and just get the message out without having to wait for the analysis to be done. I actually configured the agent such that it can perform actions on the resources or perform mitigations autonomously. And in this case, that is why it proceeded with the remediation as well, because it also felt like it's a recurring pattern. And in order to fix the issue right away, we need to sort of update the password with the new credentials and make sure it sort of flows down to the apps as well. So it went ahead and did the remediation. But in theory, you can configure the agent such that it gives you the analysis and does not do any automated actions on your behalf. So you see the final summary, it figured out the sequence of the things that led to the root cause of the password being changed. And it went ahead and fixed it. And it also checked to make sure that the new revision is healthy. And it created a GitHub issue. There you go. You went from your incidents being manually handled through like the agent actually automating it and providing a mitigation plus the summary of all the issue in a trackable GitHub issue.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Deepthi. So now let's move to a very important question. Let's talk about how we've built trust and control into every layer of the Azure SRE agent across things like permissions, governance, security, and monitoring. So let's start with permissions. There are three built-in user roles, like a reader, a standard user, and an administrator. Each of these are scoped to exactly what the persona that's interacting with the agent would need. So when you create your agent, you can choose between a reader or privileged permission level for the agent's managed identity. Now, every agent gets its own user-assigned managed identity, so there are no secrets or API keys to manage. And when the agent needs to perform an action beyond its standing permission, it uses the on behalf of or the OBO flow to temporarily elevate using your credentials. So no standing right access required. On the governance part, you control how the agent behaves through different run modes. The review mode means that the agent proposes the action and waits for an administrator to approve, while the autonomous mode lets it execute directly. That's ideal for non-productive or trusted recurring tasks. We also support command validation hooks that inspect and validate every command before execution or every tool call before it's returned. And every single action that the agent takes, from tool calls to modeling locations to approval decisions, all of this is logged to Application Insights as a full audit trail that you can query with KQL. On the security front, the architecture is secretless by design. Credentials are never entering the reasoning context. And an isolated identity sidecar issued with short-lived per token calls is where the permissions live. Each agent runs its own dedicated sandbox powered by micro VM, which is an Azure dedicated compute environment, as are what your Python tools, so no cross-agent data is leaked. Connectors to external systems like GitHub, Datadog, ServiceNow all use OAuth-based authentication flows. And all outbound network access goes through an egress proxy that validates the requests, controls what each agent can reach, or you can bring your own VNets. And finally, for monitoring, Session Insights gives you a structured summary of any conversation, what was found, what was recommended, and so on. The incident metrics dashboard shows mitigation rates, hours saved, the per response plan, as well as at a summary level. And the agent consumption lets you track exactly how many Azure AI units the agent was used on a day-to-day basis. We have inbuilt evals like the intent met quality score, which are automatically calculated on every completed thread and rated on a 1 to 5 scale so you can measure effectiveness over time. Bottom line across all of these, you get full autonomous power of things like Azure SRE agent with full enterprise controls. Now, there are three ways in which you can use the Azure SRE agent, and these are designed to work across your full operational lifecycle. The first is the interactive mode. You can chat directly with the agent in the Azure portal, ask it questions, run diagnostics, perform natural language operations, even upload your task files, hard files for traces or analysis. Think of this as like the co-pilot mode, which assumes that a human is driving the flow. But if this is the only thing you use the agent for, you're probably missing 90% of the value that an agent can unlock beyond a co-pilot. The primary way most customers use the SRE agent is as a reactive mode. This is the alert-driven response mode. The agent responds automatically to Azure Monitor alerts and integrates with PagerDuty and ServiceNow as well. It performs automated triage, initial root cause analysis, and can even trigger the mitigation with your approval, as we saw in the demo. It tracks incident metrics and insights over time for this. And the last one is the proactive mode. So this is where the agent operates autonomously on a schedule. It runs things like cron expressions, where you can perform continuous health and compliance checks. You can try to detect anomalies across different resources. You can assess the security posture of your stack, and it can provide resource optimization recommendations. So across these three modes, they give you a full coverage from ad hoc troubleshooting to always-on autonomous operation that runs in the background. So then why should you choose the Azure SRE agent? So it's built natively on Azure, which means it understands your infrastructure deeply, your resource graph, your monitor signals, your entity model. It's extensible, so it adapts to your environment rather than forcing you into a rigid workflow. It's secure by design with managed identity, RBAC, full audit trails. It integrates with the tools that you're already using across GitHub, PagerDuty or ServiceNow, Datadog, Dynatrace, whatever that you're using in your systems. And whether you're a team of a single SRE, a team of 5 operations managers, or an organization that supports thousands of services, Azure SRE agent meets you where you are, and it scales to your requirements. So let's leave you with how to quickly get started. It's a simple 3-step process. Step 1, you teach it. You upload your runbooks, your documentation, connect your code repositories, share the team knowledge, and the agent learns from every session, just like you would with a human SRE. Step 2, it connects. The agent integrates with Azure Monitor, Application Insights, PagerDuty, ServiceNow, Datadog, all of these systems, basically anything which can connect it through an MCP. And step 3, it works for you. It investigates the incidents around the clock. It runs scheduled compliance scans, triggers issues automatically, proposes fixes. You just give it context, it connects to your tool, and it starts working for you. Imagine like a teammate that never sleeps. So that's all we had for you today. Thank you all for attending today's session. If you'd like to get started, head over to sre.azure.com to access the Azure SRE agent portal. You can find our documentation, blog posts, walkthroughs, hands-on experience with our DIY labs, as well as links to support or file feedback over here. We're excited to hear what you build with Azure SRE agent. Thanks so much for attending.